In this special video, you'll discover why living close to your children in your later years might impact your happiness and well-being more than you realize. By rethinking your situation, you could transform your quality of life, and the latest findings on this topic might surprise you. Before we begin, I want you to listen carefully to this story because it holds a powerful lesson that could change everything for you. Mrs. Eleanor, a 70-year-old widow, decided to move in with her daughter, Sarah, after her husband's passing. The thought of being close to her grandchildren and helping out around the house filled her heart with joy. After all, who wouldn't want to be surrounded by loved ones in their golden years? The dream of sharing a family life seemed like winning the jackpot. The family honeymoon, when everything feels perfect. At first, everything was beautiful. The days were filled with the laughter of children, the delightful aroma of meals cooking, and the comforting sense of being needed. This is living, Eleanor thought while flipping pancakes for her grandkids. Sarah's home had become a paradise of intergenerational harmony. Mornings were spent with French toast and playful stories. Afternoons brought homework sessions that rekindled Eleanor's memories of her days as a teacher. "Grandma, can you help me with my math?" little Mike asked her one day, and her heart melted. A recent Stanford University study revealed that living with grandchildren can enhance happiness and provide a renewed sense of purpose for grandparents. Eleanor was living proof of this research. She felt younger, more alive, as though she had found the fountain of youth in her grandchildren's smiles. But as the saying goes, when something seems too good to be true, it often is. And this is where Eleanor's story takes an unexpected turn. One afternoon, while preparing dinner, Eleanor overheard Sarah on the phone. "Mom's a blessing. I don't know what we'd do without her." Eleanor felt a surge of pride, but there was also a faint, nagging feeling she couldn't quite name, a mix of concern and discomfort. When time isn't your own, the philosopher Epicurus once said, "It is not that we have little time, but that we waste much of it." Eleanor began to feel that her time was no longer her own. Where were the quiet moments to read a book or sit by the window and daydream? Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the routine took root: breakfast, homework, lunch, more homework, dinner. She began to think about her old apartment, the small but cozy space where she could choose what to do with her time. But each time she let herself think this way, she scolded herself. "How can I be ungrateful? I have everything I wanted." One Sunday morning, as she made Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes, because what grandmother hasn't done that, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she slept in or went out with friends without worrying about being back in time for dinner. Psychologist Erik Erikson emphasized the importance of autonomy in old age, but Eleanor could feel her independence slipping away. Her days, once filled with choices and freedom, had become a blur of obligations. That night, sitting on the porch under a sky full of stars, she asked herself a question she couldn't ignore. "Is this really what I want for the rest of my life?" The question lingered, unanswered, like a balloon drifting into the dark. The silent transformation from grandmother to unpaid nanny. Over time, Eleanor noticed subtle but significant changes. What began as small moments of helping out became a constant routine of caregiving. Suddenly she was changing diapers, preparing bottles, and chasing after little whirlwinds of energy. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Epicurus also said, "Time doesn't stand still, and neither does life." Eleanor began to feel the truth of those words. Her days, once filled with social activities and self-care, were now consumed by the needs of others. Like many grandmothers, Eleanor didn't complain. She loved her family deeply and felt it was her duty to help. But exhaustion crept in, bringing with it a quiet sense of loss that she couldn't fully explain. This is where the term slave grandmother syndrome comes in, a concept coined by Dr. Antonio Guaro to describe the emotional and physical toll grandmothers face when they take on unpaid caregiving roles. It's like being on an emotional roller coaster. You love your grandchildren with all your heart, but you also feel like your life is slipping through your fingers. It's like hugging a cactus, beautiful but painful. Research shows this syndrome can have severe effects on mental health. The lack of recognition, constant fatigue, and loss of personal freedom can lead to depression and anxiety. You're running a marathon, but no one's waiting for you with a medal at the finish line. Eleanor felt it, too, the increasing tiredness, the quiet frustration. She convinced herself it was normal, just part of being a grandmother. But is it truly normal to sacrifice your happiness for the sake of others? Spoiler alert, it's not. The turning point, a friend's unexpected wisdom. One ordinary day, Eleanor's lifelong friend, Mary, paid her a surprise visit. With her usual bright smile and a bag of freshly baked cookies, Mary rang the doorbell. But when Eleanor opened the door, Mary's smile faltered. "Eleanor, is that you? You look different," Mary said, noticing her friend's tired face and weary expression. Over coffee, Eleanor opened up about everything: the exhaustion, the frustration, the feeling of losing herself. "Mary, I feel like I'm not Eleanor anymore. I'm just grandma. I love my family, but where am I in all of this?" Mary nodded knowingly and squeezed Eleanor's hand. "Eleanor, what if I told you I went through the same thing? And I found a solution that gave me my life back." Eleanor's eyes widened. "You? But you've always seemed so happy, so free." Mary smiled. "Oh, it wasn't always like this. Remember when I moved in with my kids? At first it was perfect, but soon I realized I was losing my independence and my sense of self. One day I remembered something Ralph Waldo Emerson said: 'The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be.' And I decided to be myself again." Mary went on to share how she made the courageous decision to move into her own apartment. It wasn't easy. Her kids didn't understand it at first, but over time their relationship improved. "They stopped seeing me as a free babysitter and started seeing me as their mother again, a happy, independent woman," Mary said. Eleanor listened, deeply moved. Could she really make a change like that? Could she reclaim her independence while still loving her family? Mary nodded, as if reading her mind. "Eleanor, happiness comes from balance, caring for others while also caring for yourself. Studies have shown that older adults who maintain their independence have better mental and physical health. It's not selfish, it's necessary." For the first time in a long while, Eleanor felt hope. It was as though someone had turned on a light in a dark room. Perhaps it was time to reclaim her life, not just for her family, but for herself. The awakening, rediscovering the value of independence. It all began on a quiet afternoon when Mary, an old friend of Eleanor's, dropped by with a batch of homemade cookies and a nugget of wisdom. Holding Eleanor's hand gently, Mary said, "True love isn't possessive, Eleanor. Your family will cherish you even more when they see you happy being yourself." Those words stuck with Eleanor. It had been years since she truly felt like herself. That evening, with a cold cup of coffee in hand and hope flickering in her heart, Eleanor sat quietly, reflecting on her life. She loved her family deeply, yet she felt as though her own identity had been fading. Then she remembered the philosopher Seneca's words, "Life is long if you know how to use it." Was she truly living her life or just existing? The next morning, as she prepared breakfast for her grandchildren, she had a sudden realization: when was the last time I picked up a paintbrush? She couldn't remember. That same day, Eleanor decided to take a small step. She went for a walk in the park alone. At first she felt guilty for not being home, but soon that hour of solitude became her daily escape, her oasis. During those quiet walks, Eleanor began to reflect on her forgotten dreams and how to reclaim them. The next step was bolder still. She signed up for a senior painting class at the local community center. "What if I don't know how to paint anymore?" she thought nervously. But as Pablo Picasso once said, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. And inspiration found her. In that workshop, Eleanor not only rediscovered her passion for painting, but also found new friends. Between brushstrokes and laughter, she realized that life, at any age, holds endless possibilities. The difficult conversation breaking the cycle of dependency. A few weeks later, Eleanor knew it was time to have a difficult conversation with her daughter, Sarah. Taking a deep breath, she sat across from her at the kitchen table. "Sarah, sweetheart, we need to talk," Eleanor began, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah looked up, curious but unaware of what was coming. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Eleanor continued softly. "And I've realized it's time for me to have my own place." A stunned silence followed. Sarah blinked in disbelief, trying to process her mother's words. "Mom." "Why?" Sarah stammered. "Aren't you happy here? Did we do something wrong?" Eleanor offered a reassuring smile. "No, honey, you've been wonderful. But I need to rediscover myself. I need some space to grow and enjoy this stage of my life." Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "But what if you get sick? Who's going to help you?" Taking her daughter's hands in her own, Eleanor said gently, "Sarah, I'm not going anywhere far. I'll always be here for you and the kids. But this is something I need to do for myself." She remembered Jean-Paul Sartre's words, "Man is condemned to be free." At 70 years old, Eleanor was choosing that freedom. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but she nodded slowly. "You're right, Mum. I guess we all need our own space sometimes. I'll miss you, that's all." "And I'll miss you too," Eleanor replied, pulling her daughter into a hug. "But think of how much you'll enjoy my cooking when you visit, and I'm not being told I used too much salt." They both laughed, breaking the tension. The rebirth, a new chapter in Eleanor's life. The day Eleanor moved into her small apartment, she felt both nervous and excited. "Am I making the right decision?" she wondered. But then she remembered Carl Jung's words, "I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Eleanor had chosen to be brave. Decorating her new home became an unexpected therapy. Every piece of furniture, every decoration was an expression of her true self. The colorful rug she loved, but Sarah had always called too bright. The paintings she adored now hanging proudly on the walls, and even one wall painted a bold turquoise. "If only Bill could see me now," she chuckled, thinking of her late husband. Her new chapter wasn't just about living alone, it was about rediscovering life. Eleanor signed up for a gardening class where she met Linda, a sharp-witted widow who became her partner in new adventures. Together, they discovered the joys of active aging, a life full of purpose, not just passing time. "Have you noticed we don't even complain about our aches and pains anymore?" Linda asked one day over coffee. Eleanor laughed, realizing it was true. They were too busy living to worry about growing old. The paradox of love, how distance strengthens bonds. At first, Eleanor's family thought she was making a mistake. "How are you going to live alone at your age?" they questioned. But Eleanor, with a playful smile, replied, "Alone. I have more of a social life now than most influencers." She wasn't exaggerating. The physical distance between Eleanor and her family didn't weaken their connection, it strengthened it. Her grandchildren's visits became eagerly awaited adventures full of laughter and fun. One afternoon, they arrived to find Eleanor painting a giant canvas. "Grandma, you look like Picasso," little Mike exclaimed. Eleanor, with paint smudged on her face, grinned and replied, "Picasso. I'm the great Eleanor." Even phone calls became longer and more meaningful. They were no longer routine check-ins, but heartfelt conversations. As Carl Rogers once said, the good communicator listens not only with their ears, but also with their heart. That's exactly what Eleanor's family was learning to do. Eleanor's decision to reclaim her independence had a ripple effect. Her daughter Sarah later confessed, "Seeing you so happy, Mom, made me realize I need to start chasing my own dreams too." It turns out that freedom is contagious. Reflecting on her journey one day over coffee with Linda, Eleanor said, I used to think love meant being together all the time. But now I see that true love gives space to grow." Her words echoed the wisdom of Khalil Gibran, "Leave space in your togetherness." The paradox of love is that sometimes a little distance brings hearts closer together. The wisdom of balance, finding the middle ground. At a pivotal moment in her journey, Mrs. Eleanor found herself faced with a new challenge: how to maintain her precious independence while keeping a close bond with her family. As the Greek philosopher Aristotle once said, virtue lies in the middle. Mrs. Eleanor began to see firsthand how the balance between love and freedom could create harmony. The solution, like most profound truths in life, was simple in theory but difficult in practice: balance. American psychologist Stephen Covey described this as healthy interdependence, a blend of independence and connection. For Mrs. Eleanor, this meant setting clear yet flexible boundaries. She joyfully agreed to babysit Mike and Emily 2 afternoons a week, but kept the remaining days for her own activities and self-care. "It's like juggling," she'd joke with her friend Mary. "But instead of balls, I'm balancing love, freedom and responsibility." Surprisingly, this shift transformed her relationship with her family. The hours spent together became intentional and filled with genuine connection, moments of laughter, storytelling and shared joy. As the writer Mitch Albom once noted, "Death ends a life, not a relationship." Mrs. Eleanor realized that the strength of her family bonds didn't come from the quantity of time spent together, but from its quality. Of course, the road wasn't always easy. On some days, guilt would creep in like a shadow on a sunny day. But instead of suppressing these feelings, Mrs. Eleanor remembered Carl Jung's wisdom: what you deny subjugates you, what you accept transforms you. By accepting her emotions, she reaffirmed her decision and stayed the course. In fact, research from the University of Michigan revealed that older adults who strike a balance between independence and family support are 30% less likely to face depression. Mrs. Eleanor became living proof of this truth. Her newfound balance brought her not only happiness but also a sense of vitality and health. Mrs. Eleanor's legacy: a lesson in self-love and family. Mrs. Eleanor's bold choice had a ripple effect far beyond herself. As Carl Jung once said, "The greatest impact we can have on our children is not to teach them, but to live our own lives fully." Sarah, initially unsure of her mother's decision, began to see Eleanor with new eyes. She was no longer just mom, but a vibrant woman with dreams of her own. Inspired, Sarah started to re-examine her own life, asking herself if she was truly living on her own terms. For Mike and Emily, their grandmother became a living storybook and an inspiration. They listened wide-eyed as Eleanor shared tales of her adventures at the art studio or proudly showed off her latest paintings. In these small moments, they unknowingly learned an invaluable lesson: the importance of independence and the beauty of continuous growth, no matter one's age. But Eleanor's legacy wasn't limited to her family. Her story inspires us all to reflect on our own relationships. Are we allowing our loved ones the space they need to flourish, or are we unintentionally holding them back? As Khalil Gibran wisely said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." Eleanor understood that parents, too, are not possessions. Each individual has the right to live fully and authentically. So, dear viewer, let me ask you this: are you living your own life or the life others expect of you? Remember, there is always time to start fresh. If there's a dream tugging at your heart, a journey you've been postponing, take the leap. As Gandhi once said, "Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it." Boldness has genius, power and magic in it. Step out of your comfort zone. Be bold. Be yourself. Because the greatest gift you can give to yourself and your family is your own happiness. If you made it this far, comment "I am a champion," so I know the true champions of wisdom. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Trench. Now, turn on notifications for more inspiring content like this. Share this video with your loved ones so they too can draw wisdom from Mrs. Eleanor's story. Thank you for watching. Click on this next video to continue nourishing your mind with more life-changing wisdom. A warm hug to you, and until next time.